Oh, howdy all, grab yourselves a beer, it is time for some Path of Exile discussion. Today I want to talk about the skill gems that are changing in 3.10 Delirium League. So we got this information today. It's often the last piece people need in order to put together builds, and for instance the reveal of Spellslinger support's exact numbers was the last thing that I needed in order to put together what might well be my league starter, which is going to be a Spellslinger Glacial Cascade Assassin. So, I want to go through all of the gems that were either introduced or overhauled, and just give a couple of very quick thoughts on each of them. So let's start with the gems that have just been updated. Firstly, Animate Weapon has been transformed somewhat. The idea here was that Animate Weapon has always been a strong skill, and it has also been an absolute and utter pain in the ass to use. This has had a quality of life overhaul. Its maximum power level has gone down, but I think the actual power that you'll experience playing with the skill is considerably higher than it used to be. One of the key things is that lingering blades can be animated. Lingering blades are a theme that we'll come back to a couple of times later, but essentially when you cast a skill like Ethereal Knives, which is somewhere in here, when you cast a skill like Ethereal Knives, it's going to leave lingering blades in the ground. These lingering blades on the ground can then be used in order to they can be consumed by various spells, Bladefall among them, Ethereal Knives among them, and a few others, Bladefall for instance. And they will be the fuel for Animate Weapon. Animate Weapon now produces less minions, a lot less minions than it used to make, but in practice you weren't going to get all 50 of them active under the old system anyway. They're individually more powerful, quite a bit more powerful, and as a result, I think that this skill is going to be something that players can seriously consider using. You're going to want to find some way to automate the creation of lingering blades if you're going to go with Animate Weapon. So your spellcasts will be focused on conjuring the weapons, and your totems or some other source will be focused on producing these blades for you. Anyway, that's Animate Weapon. Artillery Ballista. A lot of the ballista skills have had changes that have given them a few little increases in stats. So you'll see here that the base damage, that it's got more base damage, and it also has a damage effectiveness of 40% instead of 33, up to 51% at gem level 20 from 42%. So essentially this skill is now doing 20% more damage than it used to. Additionally, totems are more durable than they used to be, so Artillery Ballista has been buffed all around. And I don't know whether this is going to put it over the line to being good, or whether it's just going to go from awful to underwhelming. Bladefall. Bladefall's change is that it now leaves lingering blades in the ground for every volley. You'll notice that these skills have a little bit of anti-automation tech, so it leaves 50% fewer lingering blades in the ground if you don't cast this spell yourself. So what that means is that if the spell is conjured by one of your totems, and I believe also if it's cast by some means where you're not actually casting the spell. So I don't know how it works with cast on critical strike. We're going to have to find that out. I sort of suspect my reading of this is that you are casting it yourself, but we're going to need to find that out in practice, because you are casting it, but also it's not something you're casting yourself. It's being triggered. So we'll have to work that out. In any case, Bladefall is a way to conjure lingering blades now. It's still an underwhelming physical damage spell. All of the physical damage spells, except for Blade Vortex, have been underwhelming for a long time. But this might mean that it has a niche use. So you could cast Bladefall first, and just make it so that you're not really trying to scale the damage on your Bladefall, you're just trying to make it cast faster, as fast as possible. And then after you've finished casting Bladefall a few times, you can go kaboom and set off Blade Blast and do lots and lots and lots of damage. Dash. A whole lot of the movement skills have been rebalanced a little bit. Dash got buffed. I still don't see myself using it. I'm just not a fan of this skill. Not even with the second wind support gem. I feel like Flame Dash is so much better, even with Flame Dash getting nerfed, that I don't see any real compelling reason to use Dash. Open to being proven wrong. Ethereal Knives deals a lot of damage now. This is actually a lot of damage that it's doing. It's a skill that's flown under the radar for a while, it's been a high damage skill for a while, and it's something that now has the additional utility of creating lingering blades. I think it may very well be possible to put together quite a powerful build that uses ethereal knives and the gem that causes your ethereal knives to fire out in a nova. One thing though that is annoying with ethereal knives is that it really wants increased projectile speed, but using faster projectile support, like burning an entire support gem in order to get faster projectile support, is a huge cost. So for that reason, I'm not sure that it will get there, but there's certainly builds that could be made around this that will at least be mediocre, if not extraordinary. Explosive Arrow has been nerfed. Explosive Arrow is probably dead. No more to say on that. Herald of Agony. Herald of Agony has had some nerfs, but it's also getting some other types of buffs. So Herald of Agony, the actual gem itself is getting weaker, but there's going to be new ways added to scale this through the cluster jewel system. Some of the cluster jewels that can affect Herald of Agony are extraordinary. One of them allows you to stack up to 5 more virulence. So instead of a limit of 40, you now have a limit of 45. This might not sound like much, it's only 12.5% more. But the way that virulence works, it scales Herald of Agony on 3 axes. So it scales your attack speed and your physical damage, your percentage physical damage and your flat physical damage. This combination means that having 3 ways of scaling Herald of Agony at once means that just a 12.5% increase in maximum virulence seems to be about a 40% increase in the damage that the Agony Crawler can do. And as well as that being 40% increase in DPS, it's also an increase in how effectively that is applied because your attack speed has gone up. So with all of this in mind, Herald of Agony looks like it will still be in a pretty good place. There's also the new, there's a new jewel that is being added that rewards you for using exactly 1 Herald and 0 auras. There's a huge opportunity cost on that because one of the best ways that you can buff an Agony Crawler is by using the Hatred aura, and that's no longer an option. But if you can make that work, then the new cluster jewel, the unique one that adds the 25% more damage to your minions created by your heralds, is looking really juicy. That said, don't sleep on the other herald skill that creates minions. Herald of Purity hasn't been changed, and by God does it look good. Precision. Precision has been nerfed at the lower gem levels. I still think it's going to be pretty good at the high gem levels, but it's something that's now more of a decision. Do I want to run Precision level 1 and get almost nothing out of it except for my Watcher's Eye buffs, or do I want to run Precision level 20 and get a huge effect, but at the expense of a massive 186 mana that comes after all of your other reservations are calculated? Precision's still a good aura, and I've been quite happy running it at level 20 in the past. I don't think it's getting nerfed at 20 at all. Shrapnel Ballista. There's been a number of little changes to these ballista skills, and this one is one that's outlined in the patch notes, but essentially it's just a raw damage buff. This one's only about 15% buff, so 15% more multiplier. We're going from 33% to 38%, and we're going from 38% to 44% at level 20. That's your damage effectiveness and base damage. This is a considerable buff, but again, whether this is enough to take it from derisory to serviceable or derisory to good is not clear yet. We'll have to play with it in practice. Temporal Chains. Temporal Chains is actually not the thing that's really being nerfed here. What's being nerfed indirectly is self-curse Temporal Chains Headhunter shenanigans. So there is a combo setup that players can use in order to inflict Temporal Chains on themselves. Then, used in conjunction with the boots that prevent your movement speed from being reduced, this allows you to gain the benefits of Temporal Chains on yourself without the drawbacks. The drawbacks are that your action speed is slowed. That isn't there when you're using Kalim's Roots. However, the benefits are that temporary buffs on you expire slower. So this has been a popular setup for a long time, in conjunction with the unique item Shackles of the Wretched. This whole setup is being nerfed considerably, and that's that magic line, 50% less effect of curse against players. So what this is going to mean, if you want to use Temporal Chains on yourself in order to make your Headhunter buffs last longer, you are going to need to invest a lot into curse effectiveness. Where in the past you could get most of what you needed from just having a high quality temporal chains gem and by having the 30% increased effective temporal chains helmet enchant, now you are going to need a lot more investment. Lots of nodes on the passive tree dedicated to increasing curse effectiveness. You might need to be an occultist. So essentially the opportunity cost of actually breaking Headhunter, of getting 80-second buffs instead of 20-second buffs out of it, is going through the roof. And as a consequence, Headhunter will be less broken than it currently is. Temporal Chains, as far as a skill that you use against enemies, has not been nerfed. It's still as good as it used to be. It is only if you are using it on yourself that it has been nerfed, and if you aren't sure what that means, it doesn't affect you. Volatile Dead. Volatile Dead has had a couple of little numerical changes, but it's had no numerical changes, but just displays now that you are limited to a maximum of 60 orbs at a time. So that's just clarifying. That's always been there. It's just really bringing the gem up to what it's always done. Arctic Breath. Arctic Breath was a large numerical change, and the base projectile speed has been increased, cast time has been decreased, and whilst the damage has been decreased slightly, as is the mana cost, this is only in line with the cast time. The key thing here is that the projectile speed has gone up, so the gem will be much smoother to use. Still not sure I want to use it, but it's better. Flame Dash has been nerfed, but it's still insanely good. Its cooldown recovery speed has been nerfed considerably. Frostblink has been buffed, and I still don't think anyone is going to use it, but I am very open to being proven wrong. Kinetic Blast has had its numbers improved. It's still the same gem it always was, but it just doesn't... It has numbers that are better than they used to be. Lightning Warp. Lightning Warp has had a number of changes recently, and it's hard to keep track of all of them. But essentially, it's been buffed, it's been made faster than it used to be. Power Siphon has had minor numerical improvements. Power Siphon and its Val variant are very, very, very good skills at the moment, and I highly recommend considering them. Pyroclast Mine has been nerfed to high hell, but may still be very good. It was so good that the big nerf that it's had, which is losing the additional projectiles, the additional projectiles have been halved in number. So instead of getting 1 per 2 previous mines in the detonation sequence, it's now 1 per 4. This is a big nerf, but it still may just be good enough. Ray Spectre has had a nerf, and it is a considerable one. The Spectres are now 4 levels lower than they used to be, which means that they will do less damage, they will have less hit points. It's not a backbreaking nerf, but it is considerable. Ray's Zombie. Ray's Zombie has been changed, but whilst the nerfs to the gem are pretty small, the nerfs to the Baron unique helmet are tremendous, and those two go together very, very closely. They're like... Ray's Zombie is like peanut butter, and the Baron is like jelly. They've been going together for a long time. Well, now they may not be hanging out anymore. The Baron has been nerfed pretty hard. It still works for Ray's Zombie, but it's just not what it used to be. Spirit Offering has been nerfed to oblivion because it really needed to be. There was a trick where you could get your offerings to take effect on you, and then you could have this as a castle channeling skill connected to Cyclone, and this would grant you a tremendous amount of energy shield. This entire shenanigans has been removed entirely, and Spirit Offering now is just solely minions gain a little bit of defense, but mostly they gain their physical damage as chaos damage. No more is the days where it gave you a tremendous amount of energy shield. Summon Carrion Golem. Summon Carrion Golem has had a couple of little changes that represent some nerfs. Now causes your Carrion Golem to deal 5% more damage per non-golem minion near them, instead of 8%, up to a maximum of 50%, so from a previous maximum of 80%. Essentially, it's just a pure numerical nerf. It's not a gutting, but it's something that you'll feel. Carrion Golem was doing a lot of damage, and it's doing a bit less now. Summon Skeletons, these have had the bones taken out of them pretty hard. Summon Skeletons have been insane for a long period of time. They may now be back to as weak as they were in Legion. And when I say as weak as they were in Legion, they were pretty insane in Legion as well. I still think they're good, but they are nowhere near the absolute powerhouses they've been in recent leagues. Flameblast and Valve Flameblast have had some major changes to them. So, Flameblast first. Flameblast has had its initial radius reduced tremendously, but it will now, the radius when it expands, will grow to a much bigger level than it used to be able to grow to. So essentially, Flameblast, the longer you channel, the bigger that the area gets. This is probably a buff. It's not strictly a buff. Very short channels will be smaller, but I think in general you can say that Flameblast is in a better position than it was a league ago. That said, it wasn't in a good position a league ago, and I don't think that a modest buff to the area is exactly what it needed. Valve Flameblast, on the other hand, has been buffed a lot. I think Valve Flameblast is looking really, really, really good at the moment. So with Valve Flameblast, if you've never used it before, instead of Flameblast start small and grow approach, Valve Flameblast starts huge, and it fires off a Flameblast that hits everything, then it contracts and fires another one, contracts, fires another, contracts, fires another. What's happening now is that it will explode a total of, it's either 5 or 6 times, I think it will explode a total of 6 times, which is going to cause it to do more and more and more damage, and especially it will be really good on single targets, where you can get that bang, 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 get lots of big hits in a short period of time. I think Valve Flameblast is getting exactly what it needed. It's getting a real buff. Lastly, we have the other support gem. We have the other updated gems. Ballista Totem has just got stats improved. Nothing particularly exciting because Ballista Totem was in a terrible place, but it might now be good. And Feeding Frenzy has been gutted. Feeding Frenzy has had its massive damage buff removed, and so Feeding Frenzy is now purely a quality of life gem. It still has a small damage buff from the actual Feeding Frenzy buff itself, but this really is a big gutting to minion damage. Now with minions, it's a choice. If you want them to be aggressive, you are going to be paying for that in damage. It's no longer going to be the case that you use one support gem, it gives them the aggressive behavior, and it also is the best support gem you could use for damage. Now Feeding Frenzy is getting gutted. All in all, I think that this puts Necromancers in a mediocre place. I don't think they've been nuked from orbit, but I don't think they're looking great either. So let's have a quick discussion of the new support gems. There is Second Wind, which makes cooldown movement speeds better than they otherwise would be. I think that you definitely will use this on every cooldown oriented gem. On every cooldown oriented movement skill is going to use Second Wind. The ability to store one additional use on them is huge. The improved cooldown recovery speed is very welcome, but is not extraordinarily good, it's just good. So yeah, Second Wind, I think you're definitely going to want to use this if you've got the spare socket for it. I don't think that the mana is going to be an issue. Most of the movement skills are not particularly mana intensive. The main thing is, can I spare a socket? Of course, one difficulty will come up if your movement skill normally is linked to blood magic. Then suddenly, one, you may not have the additional socket for it, and two, even if you do, you might find that that starts causing you to take a bit more damage in crisis situations from blood magic, so that's a difficult decision to make. Archmage support is transformative of how characters will be transformative of how characters that use it are built. So what this does is it tremendously increases the mana cost of the supported spells of the supported skills, and it causes them to deal additional lightning damage. So let's have a quick look at exactly how everything works. Firstly, supported skills have 10% increased mana cost. I actually believe that this is the quality bonus, which is interesting because normally that would be a drawback, except in this case, it's not. Supported skills have about 1/2 of the benefit of an equal level added lightning support. Now, supported skills have base mana cost equal to 6% of unreserved maximum mana if that value is higher. So, If you've got an unreserved mana pool of 5,000, then this is going to increase the base cost of a skill to 300 mana, which is going to be higher than the cost of the skill was originally. That is then going to be modified by all of the other support gems that you link to the skill. So let's say that you're using Glacial Cascade, and then you're linking it to Archmage support. Suddenly, instead of costing the usual, I believe it's 24 mana for a level 20 Glacial Cascade, your level 20 Glacial Cascade is going to cost 300 mana. If it's then linked to Physical to Lightning support, which is 110%, that's then going to be increased to 330%. If it's linked to Controlled Destruction, which from memory is 140%, as well as Physical to Lightning, then suddenly you're looking at a much bigger number again, 462 mana. So you can see how this is going to cause your mana cost to absolutely explode. So why would you want to spend so much mana? Well, supported skills gain added lightning damage equal to 127% of mana cost if the mana cost is not higher than the maximum you could spend. So let's unpack that. Firstly, let's talk about what if the mana cost is not higher than the maximum you could spend is. What that means is that if you're using temporary buffs to cause your mana cost to explode, and of course I'm talking about the unique helmet Indigon here, then in that case, Archmage will not allow you to gain the benefit of spending more than your unreserved mana pool. So if you find a way to cheat mana costs and cast a spell that costs 175% of your base mana, you will not gain any benefit from this last line. That's all that last half of this line means. So supported skills gain lightning damage equal to 127% of the mana cost. If we again were to take that Glacial Cascade with 5,000 unreserved mana example that I was discussing before, then suddenly, if we're paying 462 mana for this Glacial Cascade, we're getting 127% of 462 mana as base lightning damage. This is a lot of extra lightning damage. So, what sort of skills would you want to use Archmage support with? Ultimately, I think what you're wanting is skills that either have a very high damage multiplier, something like Fireball, which gains 180% the benefit of any of these flat sources of additional damage, or you want a skill that hits a lot quickly. Additionally, because Archmage support is adding lightning damage, you probably want a skill that's already doing lightning damage. Unfortunately, there is a skill that is perfect for both of these, and that skill is Ball Lightning. And the other skill that's perfect for both of these is Stormbrand. Both of these are pure lightning damage gems that will gain tremendous benefits from Archmage support. I've not been able to run any numbers on how you might go about building either Stormbrand Archmage or Ball Lightning Archmage, but I think that both of them have a lot of potential. You might play them as standard lightning builds, or you might even use two of the unique ring Call of the Brotherhood and turn that damage into cold damage, which can then inflict chills and freezes for you, and yeah, have lots of other options there. I do think it's very important to understand though with Archmage there is a huge opportunity cost here, and that is that when you're using Archmage support, you're just not able to run auras the way that you would otherwise do so. So no Wrath, no Hatred, no Zealotry, no Malevolence, none of those good things. So there's a huge opportunity cost to using this gem, but I think the numbers might be there, and I'm going to play around a little bit and see what I can put together as an Archmage Ball Lightning character. So in terms of the brand new gems, Bladefall is going to need its own video. I may do that myself, or I may just find something that I can recommend. But generally speaking, this is one of the most build-around gems we've seen in a long time. It encourages the use of other skill gems with it, and so much like the Ice Nova Frostbolt playstyle, it creates a new way of playing the game that uses two different skills simultaneously. I think there is a possibility of using this in conjunction with the unique stuff, the Disintegrator, to potentially deal staggering amounts of pure physical damage. And I also think that there's ways of using this in conjunction with Elemental Conversion, maybe even with the unique armor, the Eternity Shroud. These will not be compatible with each other, they would be different builds to each other, but I think there's lots of things you can do with this. I'm quite excited to see what can be done with Bladefall. Next up we have Spellslinger. This has its own video, and I've already put up with my outlines of how I'm intending to use it in conjunction with Glacial Cascade. I'm not sure that it's going to be great, but I think I might give it a go as a league starter because it's just such a unique and new skill gem effect. We have Stormblind, which I am not interested in at the moment. I just feel like it overlaps with Flameblast too much. It's a long channel skill that doesn't do much until you've channeled it for a while, and I feel that in the current state of the game, that's not really where you want to go. It may be possible that Stormblind might be an excellent skill to use for killing bosses specifically, if the damage numbers are there, but I'm not going to be the person that's going to determine whether that's the case or not. We have Kinetic Bolt. Kinetic Bolt is a brand new wand attack skill that has a couple of interesting mechanics. It causes a projectile that sort of mostly goes forward, but can bounce around a little bit. And I don't think that the accuracy is there. Now, when I'm talking about accuracy, I'm not talking about the in-game, your accuracy rating compared to the monster's evasion. What I'm talking about here is accuracy in the sense that I think this projectile is sometimes going to wander off into directions you don't want it to go. So I'm not going to build around Kinetic Bolt myself, but it may turn out that I'm wrong and it's better than I think it is. Lastly, we have Arcane Cloak. Arcane Cloak is a guard skill competing with Molten Shell, Steel Skin, and Immortal Coal and the like, and it's an interesting one. It drains a phenomenal amount of your current mana. 64% of your current mana is turned into an ablative shield. Essentially, think of it this way: if your life pool is if your mana pool is 5,000 unreserved mana, of which 3,000 is currently available, this is going to eat 1,920 mana. So that's 64% of your 3,000 mana that you've currently got. The size of the overall pool doesn't matter. It's going to eat that 1920 mana, and then it's going to create a shield around yourself that is going to absorb up to that full 1920 damage. Now, 75% of damage taken from hits is going to come from the buff instead of coming from your life or energy shield. So this is going to be a powerful defensive layer. The buff can take damage equal to the mana that's been spent by the skill's effect, and the buff grants added lightning damage equal to 14% of the mana that you spent casting it. So again, in this hypothetical example where you have 3,000, where you have a mana pool of 5,000 with 3,000 of it available and 2,000 consumed, you're going to have a 1920 point shield, and while that shield lasts, you're going to have an approximately 270 added lightning damage to all of your attacks and all of your spells. I feel that this is going to put too much pressure on your mana pool. I think that you're probably going to find you're better off using a skill that is using a different guard skill, something like Steel Skin, which will provide comparable protection in most situations, but will not drain your mana pool, and will also not put you in a position where you've got basically no mana left for the next time that you need a guard skill. So if you've got almost no mana left, and you cast Arcane Cloak, you're going to get almost no defensive buff from it, and almost no offense from it either. So you need to be regenerating your mana really fast, and you need to have a massive mana pool. These two things together are not easy to get. However, I do want to see what can be done by using this in conjunction with the Zerfi's Last Breath unique flask, which is something that might just happen to find its way back into the metagame. Other than that, though, I'm not that impressed with Arcane Cloak. I don't think the numbers are there, but I'm sure that some people will try it and some people will have success with it. So in terms of the gems that have been revealed, what are the ones that excite me the most? There is Spellslinger as just something that is new and totally build defining. There is Archmage support. which I think creates a space for high mana builds. For high mana builds to, as long as they can find a way to replenish their mana quickly, this can be almost a build your own Indigon setup, where you can burn through your mana and gain tremendous rewards for doing so, but you're going to need to find a way to replenish your mana quickly. There are a couple of unique items and also Shaper chest mods that allow you to regenerate a large amount of mana when you kill a monster, and so for general purpose mapping, these may help maintain Archmage support really well. In terms of the reworks, I'm kind of keen to see how Val Flameblast works, and I'm excited just by the small numerical tweaks on Kinetic Blast and also on Power Siphon. These were already good skills, they've just gotten better. Anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Comments and questions, fire away below.